This is iFanboy Pick of the Week 774, brought to you by Macroverse, Next Generation Comics plus Webtoon. Download the app at www.macroverse.com. And iFanboy listeners just like you who are washing their hands, wearing their masks, and getting their vaccines. Hello, welcome to iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 774. My name is Connor Kilpatrick.
That would make me your co-host, Josh Flanagan.
And we are iFanboy, and every week we read a bunch of comics, and one of us picks their favorite book called the Pick of the Week. Sometimes the week is a heavy week of comics. Sometimes it's a light week of comics. We have no control over that. We also have no control over the quality of the books. Just
wow, it's almost as if your preamble here is telling us something about how you feel.
Where are we in the script? We talk about the books, other books, Patron Pick. I lost track. Emails, if we have time. I think we'll have time this week. We'll have some fun. Spoiler warning. This is a review show. There'll be some spoilers this week. Josh, you had the pick of the week.
I did have the pick of the week, and
pretty easy one.
It was a pretty easy one. I did not like my books this week. I had fine with them, but there were a lot of fine books.
Yeah, it was fine. It was a fine week. But so for me, there's only one great book, and that was the pick of the week.
Yeah, the pick of the week is Beta Ray Bill, #1.
Bill.
From Daniel Warren Johnson, with Mike Spicer on colors, Joe Sabino, with assists from Daniel Warren Johnson on lettering. I assume that is like sound effects on the board.
Probably. Who knows?
Yeah, actually, now that I'm remembering, there are two things here that made this the pick of the week. So what we have is an in-continuity story of where we are with Beta Ray Bill now. Yeah. It sort of explores his character in a way that hasn't really been happening that much, even though he's been around for a bit.
He's also been around recently a lot. He's been in a lot of Thor comics. He's been
Donny Cates has really made an effort to put him back in. I think he was a Guardian of the Galaxy for a little bit. And he's been serving the role as like Thor's pal. Mm-hmm. And then there was a big fight in Thor, where basically like Thor broke his hammer that Odin had gifted Bill, and then they supposedly made up. But this issue is large. Stormbreaker. But in this issue, it's like Bill's not okay.
Well, I mean, for various reasons, the Stormbreaker. Yes. See, let's back up for a second. I like the road you're going down. I just want to establish some baselines. So, like, Beta Ray Bill was an old school Walt Simonson creation.
82.
And he in the main Thor books, he took over for Thor for a while, and he was sort of playing the role of Thor. He had the hammer, he had the suit, and he was a horseman. And as a kid, I didn't read a ton of Thor comics, but I certainly read enough. So I liked Beta Ray Bill, but I didn't really know anything about him. Mm-hmm. And even now, as a not kid, I didn't really know a lot about Beta Ray Bill. I always liked when he showed up. I always liked the character. I liked the design, even though sometimes it's creepy. I like his relationship with Thor and the other people in the universe. He's the guy that no one dislikes, right? He's like, some people don't like Thor. I'm talking about characters in the world. He can be brash and annoying, but everyone loves Bill. And so here, I didn't know that he was like we had in the last Thor, or the current Thor arc with Donald Blake. Donald Blake removed his magical whatever, and he became there was a humanoid man, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Because I don't know the intricacies of Beta Ray Bill. So here we actually learned
he's like Alan the Alien. Like he was super, like he was supposed to be their protector, and so they roided him up, and then it turns out he was very worthy, so he ended up with a hammer, and that's how we get to this Bill.
Well, my point is that the reason why breaking Stormbreaker was such a big deal wasn't just his axe; it was the enchanted weapon that allowed him to turn from humanoid to horseman.
Right.
So now he's stuck as horseman, which is an important plot point for this issue. That's why I wanted to back it up, just because I didn't know that going into this issue. Again, because I just knew Bill, the sweet horse dude. I didn't know about all the rest of it.
And a couple of things that I thought were really interesting about this. So when I see Daniel Warren Johnson's name, I think, this is going to be sort of a more prestige-y thing. It's going to be off on its own. And this is actually firmly rooted in what is going on in the continuity right now. There's even King in Black stuff about it.
Which is not over, by the way.
Yeah, no, I recognize that.
It's just never going to be over.
I've got to say, I mean, this is an aside. We'll do a little sidebar. it hasn't really ruined the comics that it's been involved with.
No. I'm not. I just think it's funny. It's just going.
No,
forever.
I'm just saying though that like we normally when comics bleed into everything else, it makes them terrible. For whatever reason, this event hasn't really harmed the ongoing books it was going for. I don't know why. Like when it shows up in the other books, I'm not annoyed. Mm-hmm. And then some of the specials have been pretty good. And I'm not reading the main series, but I'm fine.
Right.
It's very different than a lot of the other. I gotta give him the credit for that. Anyway, so yeah, he's sort of he's in a bad place, you know, and he's got a love affair kind of thing going on with Sif, and they go back to his room, and this is the coldest, saddest scene in the whole damn thing.
Yes,
is that they're making out, and you know he just needs some solace. He doesn't feel good, and then she's like, "So how's this work?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Not being a horse." Yeah, I mean, she didn't say that, but like,
well, she's like, when do you turn back into a man? Because
yeah. And he's like, I can't. And then she takes off. She's like, I can't. I was like, oh, shit. And then he does say a line, though. And she's like, I'm sorry. And he's like, and he looks in the mirror. He goes, I understand. I'm not blind. And he's looking at his horse face. And it is sad as hell.
Oh, God. Well, he walks out and he's down the hallway holding his head in his hand. Like, it was rough for old Bill.
He's doing the Charlie Brown walk. And, you know, like the George Michael Bluth walk, you know, a lot in this. Yeah, it's really a bummer. Now, at the same time, they fight. He fights a symbiote Fin Fang Foom.
Yes.
And like on that double page spread of a big Fin Fang Foom, whether he's symbiote or not, I was like, that's damn good. And he's got a big beautiful axe. And Thor at one point he was like, I gave you all the weapons. And he's like, it's not the same. But you know, he beats the very powerful Fin Fang Foom. And I forgot about Bill's really giant spaceship, because that's actually in his first appearance. Mm-hmm. That's what he shows up in, back in the Simonson books. And he's also got like a little, like a AI helper, not unlike Booster Gold's, flying buzzy thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Skeets.
It looked great. I mean, and I like, we've talked about Johnson a lot. I actually just I guess it was that Wonder Woman series that you just did. I was like,
Dead
you just saw him do a thing, you know, but it felt special, but it also didn't feel apart from everything else. And I thought that was really impressive. And also just, it was a solid comic, so a solid Marvel comic book.
I thought it looked amazing. I think his art is terrific.
No, I do too. I'm saying it managed to both fit in with what was going on and look special at the same time. And that doesn't always happen. I was really surprised that this guy who does these little sort of prestige projects and shows up in things, you know, slid right into the continuity of the thing that was going on and made it work with his style. It was like as if Paul Pope came along and did just a regular issue of something, you know, that happened to be really good.
I mean, there were really terrific things happening here. I mean, this was an easy pick of the week. This would have been mine as well. Aside from the really, devastating emotional scene with Sif. When Bill rallies the troops of Asgard to go fight Fin Fang Foom, it was awesome. Yeah. You know, he does his Maximus speech, you know, sons of Asgard, they go, hooah! And, you know, that was a great panel. Yeah. You know, he's awesome. And then he's not
far off from Maximus in this, actually. Like, he rallies everybody. He's like,
And then a giant fist punches through the wall and he goes flying. That's a great panel also.
That was an amazing panel. That is the kaboom. Yeah. Just the hand out of nowhere. And that follows. Yeah, that was a really spectacular.
This was a great comic. And I also don't think we should be allowed to have two relatively new writers with three names, both with the last names of Johnson. There's Daniel Warren Johnson and Philip Kennedy Johnson.
Daniel Warren Johnson has two first names and a last name. And then Philip Kennedy. Wait, now, okay, there was no president called Warren. There was Chief Justice Earl Warren. But there was a Kennedy.
I'm just saying it's confusing, and they both should live in the town from Blazing Saddles and run for president. So, anyway.
Shitload of
this looked amazing. It was thrilling. It was sad. The characterization stuff was great. Thor's in this book, too, and he's not like an asshole. He's just,
No.
I thought it was a pretty
good
he and Bill are like
examination of
brothers who are having problems.
Yeah, and there's a pretty good examination of the character of Thor and like how he comports himself and how sort of Bill deals with it, and sort of where those statuses, statum,
Stati?
I don't know, where those lay.
The ending of the book is Bill's like, fuck this, I'm getting in my giant ship, where they're playing Hook for some reason on the internal monitors.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, and then I'm out. I'm going to go figure out what the hell's going on since I can't be a man anymore. I'm just a horse.
Mm-hmm.
So he leaves. He gets in the ship and he bails. So that's the ending of the book. So we're getting on the space road trip.
Oh, it's pretty good. I'm really like, I could have kept going. If this was a trade, I'd have kept going.
Yeah.
The back matter here is an interview where Daniel Warren Johnson interviews Walt Simonson, the creator of Beta Ray Bill and a lot of what's going on in here. And it is two artist comic book creators talking to each other, and it's really specific about art and craft and sort of the thinking behind the creative decisions, and it was delightful. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed this interview. I don't know, like, I think it's fairly well known that like Walt Simonson is one of the great people.
One of the nicest people in comics ever.
Yeah, and not even just nice, but like he's a good guy and he's interesting and he likes to talk about. Every time I've ever seen him or talked to him, he's excited to talk about his work. We met him that one time in San Diego and interviewed him, and like he was excited to get out his portfolio and show us what he'd been working on. And I can't tell you how rare that is, not just among artists, but somebody who's been around since 1972.
Right.
It's amazing, and I think that shows in his work. And I think that, like, when you first see those Thor covers, you know, from the 80s, there's something about them that speaks to that. But you know, Johnson was really knowledgeable and excited to talk to him about these things, and it was just it was a great little. I don't read comic book interviews ever, and right. I couldn't stop reading this one. It's just a nice little bit on top of it, because I do think that this book was not slavish to the source material, but I think it was, it respected it, and it used it, in the best way. Really fun.
Good news for you is that this is only part of the interview. The rest of the interview you can find over at Marvel.com.
Oh, so I did not know that.
I'm reading the end
of it. That's rad. Yeah,
this was a great comic top to bottom. I think anyone who likes Marvel, the Thor books, any of that stuff should check this issue out. Daniel Warren Johnson fans, great comic, just good comic fans. This book gives you all the information you need. It's tied into the current Thor storyline, but it's not. It doesn't. It sets the table for you. It does everything you need to do to read, enjoy.
You don't need to have read like the old Simonson stuff or whatever. I mean, like, it probably will change your enjoyment of it in a different way, but it'll hold up. You'll be fine. Mm-hmm. So don't let that stop you.
Really great comic.
Totally.
So we also had the first issue of The Flash in Infinite Frontier, much like Wonder Woman, original numbering Flash number 768, which, again, I don't know the strategy behind any of this numbering, not numbering.
This is a good example of the system that I've asked Connor to participate in, where I'm like, you have to warn me, because if I see just Flash 768, I won't know, or something like that. And he said, you got to read that's a new one. Okay. So I did that.
Written by Jeremy Adams, drawn by Brandon Peterson and Marco Santucci and David LaFuente. Colors by Mike Attia, Arif Prianto, Luis Guerrero, and Steve Wands on letters. And so in Infinite Frontier, the special issue that Joshua Williamson wrote, Barry went to Wally and said, you be the Flash of Earth, I'll be the Flash of the multiverse. And we said, cool, that's going to happen. And then in Justice League number 1, Barry was on the Justice League. And we find out it's because here, Wally's like, I don't want to be Flash. I'm out. And he wants to quit, which seems very abrupt considering what I had just read with Wally. But what did you think of this issue?
I thought it was fun to read, and it felt very Flash-like. I mean, like, there's some problem that comes up out of nowhere, and they have to deal with it. And I think everything's sorted out, but no, there's another problem. And then you've got time-traveling Michigas, and you have grumpy Oliver Queen, which I thought was really fun. Mm-hmm. Because he's like, well, how come you have your guy? Well, my Speedy's dead. More or less, that's what the pout was. I liked that, but on the other hand, it did make me sigh heavily, just like I did now, because
again, you punch the cosmic wacky button reboot, and that's your chance to not deal with things that are annoying, including all the fallout from Heroes in Crisis. Like, wipe that slate clean.
Well, I mean, I think the thing is, this goes back to what I, had spoken to Josh Williamson about, was he's like, do your comic, take the parts you want. And so for some reason in this one, they said, I want to keep Heroes in Crisis. I want, so that's the choice that they made for this thing, right or wrong, whether you like it. I do think that it gives, there's dramatic conflict that then happens, where Ollie has a reason to have a chip on his shoulder instead of just being that way. I like the idea of the, being stuck in different places in time. I thought.
Well, yeah. So Wally's like, I don't want the Speed Force anymore. I don't want to be Flash anymore. I want to go hang out with Linda and my kids. So they're still around.
And they're still ruining everything.
And so Barry takes him to go one last run together. And instead of losing his speed, Wally gets sucked into the Speed Force and sort of becomes Dr. Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap. He wakes up in the body of like a Cro-Magnon man with the dinosaurs, even though there were no people and dinosaurs around at the same time, but it doesn't matter, it's comic books. And so he has an adventure in prehistoric times trying to survive against a raptor who also has super speed. Which is
a problem.
They're already fast. They could already open doors.
Girls.
They can open doors. There's even a Clever Girls scene in here where the raptor pops up next to him in the jungle, which creeped me out. Even still, I have that elemental fear from Jurassic Park, which I saw, when I was a kid when I saw it, and was.
I think there's a line in the movie or one of them about that too. Like, you just know to be afraid of the thing. I can't remember. There's a lot of those movies. Wally
versus super speed raptor, and then at the end he, leaps forward into the future where he's now inside Impulse's body. So I mean, it was like a fun romp, and I also really liked the fact that the Flash, Barry Allen, was in his original Flash costume with no stupid lines. Now I don't know if that's a mistake or just because Brandon Peterson's drawing it, but I liked it.
That was what you led with. You should read this because he's not in his stupid costume. Which is not.
That is what I said.
That was really the only thing you told me.
That is what I said.
It's not in his stupid costume, and Brandon Peterson drew it, and I was like, okay, that's fine.
Boy, it was fun. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was like earth shattering, but I did enjoy it.
I don't think I read the credits. I knew that it was Brandon Peterson and then some other people. I don't know if I got that far. So when I went back to put the script together and I saw it was David LaFuente, I was like, really? I didn't think I noticed it. And he did the impulse bit at the end, and it was really good. It was like, I don't feel like I haven't seen him in a while. I actually thought of him the other day. I was like, what happened to that guy? But it didn't look as, I don't know, it looked good.
Yeah.
Really nice.
The art in the book was really good. And I especially enjoyed how the Justice League always stands around in a wedge. They're always just there in a wedge, letting you know the hierarchy of the members. And I don't know who Jeremy Adams is. I'm looking him up on DC.
Yeah,
he did the Superman Worlds at War miniseries for Future State, Suicide Squad. Worlds at War was good. I didn't read Suicide Squad, so he's.
I'm gonna guess he's a YA author. That's
relatively new into comics anyway. So I thought it was fun.
Yeah,
the raptor freaks me out.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
And there was text on the cover, which is always nice.
As Wally bounces around time. So
that's the history of the DC universe. What about the other history of the DC universe?
Did you fall off this book?
I did. I kind of forgot about it, and then I grabbed 2 at some point, but I hadn't read it.
So this is book 3. The other history of the DC universe, written by John Ridley, drawn by Giuseppe Camuncoli. Although this issue, Giuseppe Camuncoli just did the layouts, and Andrea Cucci did the finishes. And Jose Villarrubia colors, Steve Wands again on letters. And this is John Ridley's book focusing on the minority characters in DC. Book 2 was about Bumblebee and Guardian, I think, Mal from the Teen Titans era. And this one's focusing on Katana. I thought it was really good. I liked it. Katana's an interesting character. She's, slightly not as heroic. She's basically a murderer. She goes around killing people with her sword. And
I don't know who this character is. Meaning that, I'd never seen her before. I got my kid, a Women of the DC Universe, kids book, and I was like, I don't know who that. I didn't know who she was, and I didn't know who Bumblebee was.
Right.
Like that's where I saw them first. So like, where are they from?
Well, Katana was, she came along in the 80s. She was an outsider. So she was created by Jim Aparo and James Barr, Mike Barr. I say James. I think Mike Barr.
James O'Barr did the Crow.
Right. I think it was Mike Barr and Aparo. I think they created her. Whoever created the Outsiders, I don't know.
It's Mike W. Barr, isn't it?
Yes, that's it. Mike W. Barr and Jim Aparo. They were the Outsiders, basically. The seminal, Batman.
Stay gold, Pony Boy.
And not been around a super long time, but she's become an important character. She's in a lot of the cartoons.
Yeah.
She's been around for a long time. She's been in almost every incarnation of the Outsiders. And I don't know why it just made me laugh because now you've got Pony Boy in my head. And this was interesting. She comes from tragedy. She's ruthless, and I thought the relatively short history of the character led to much more in-depth exploration of her. She came along with Black Lightning, so basically, I mean, it's not like this book is, because the first issue of this series focused on Black Lightning, so it's almost like this is a little mini Outsiders book, even though probably these are the only two minority characters in the Outsiders, so there'll probably be no more of those. But it's sort of a parallel structure to the Black Lightning one. It's a different story. She has a different experience, and I also think that this was, timely considering the what's going on now in the United States with all of the anti-Asian violence. In that that's dealt with here. And in fact, he much like with the Black Lightning book, he explores some real life situations. She tells a story here of a real Chinese American man who was murdered in Detroit in the 80s because of the Japanese auto industry. So it was timely. The art was terrific. What they've been doing in this book is they've been sort of mimicking or aping certain art styles throughout the comics world. So there's a lot of Jim Aparo-like art here. There's some Dan Jurgens because they deal with the death of Superman. It's just she's an interesting character, and she's a good character, and she's a popular character. Gabrielle, the relationship she has with Gabrielle is interesting. Batman sort of appoints her as the guardian of this woman who basically is like a young child in a woman's body. And they become friends, and they become sort of family, and that was an interesting arc as well. I thought this was good, not as good as the first one. I think Black Lightning is still the best one. I didn't really love the second one, but this one I thought was really interesting. It had a lot of things to say that were good. It wasn't. Black Lightning's book was very angry, right? That character was angry. He was angry about his place in the world, angry about society. This was slightly less angry and more introspective.
Nice.
It was good, and I think the storytelling is interesting. It's not, and we talked about this before, it's like, a couple images and a lot of text. It's not like quite, comic book storytelling, but the way they use the images together with the art together with the words, and sometimes how the art lives inside holding devices and the style changes from page to page. I think it really works for these books.
I wanted to check in on The Union, number 4. It's written by Paul Grist with art by Andrea DeVito. And a new inker name I've never heard, but LeBeau Underwood. And Look and Beau are separate, which means he's the beautiful Underwood.
I think we have a new top 5 name entry.
Yeah, Wade Von Grabach is like, what? That's my neighborhood. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm having a blank of the Paul, our pal who did the British superhero book from
Paul
Marvel.
Cornell?
Paul Cornell, that's right. And what was the name of the book, the team book?
Captain Britain MI-13.
There you go. This reminds me a lot of that series in that I've got a bunch of characters who are British, who exist and maybe have existed. Maybe some are new. I'm not really sure. But it's a new superhero team to me. And
I think probably to most people.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And there's a history that's sort of going on here, and they're coming together to be a team, and because I'm American and they are British, it's just a little left of center enough to be interesting to me, which is I think why a lot of Americans like British TV shows, because it's just some of the cliches aren't exactly the same, so it feels a little fresher. And so we've got this team, and they have a job. They have to go rescue Britannia or find out who killed her. I forget which. And then there's like a whole new team of supervillains, and it's like half overwrought drama and half just a little silly. There's a superpowered corgi dog. They go to rob the Tower of London. It turns out that the government contact their Peter Henry Gyrich character, he's actually got a supervillain past, and he does some dirty shit in the last issue, not this one necessarily. It's just it's really fun. It's kind of like having a new kind of superhero team book, in the midst of all the other stuff that's happening. And I've just really been enjoying it. I read 3 and 4 this week. It kind of reminds me of too, like when I started reading Starman. That not so much in structure or anything, but Starman had this whole universe that existed of all these villains and this sort of history that was already there. I just didn't know any of it. So it's like there was this established tapestry that they could draw on. And it was really good. I've really been enjoying this series. You reading it?
Yeah, I read the first one, and I had not read the second one. And you talked about 2 on the show, and you were like, I really enjoyed it. So I went back and I read 2, and then I've been reading it since then. And it has been really fun. I think everything you're saying is correct. I think the art's really strong, the Andrew DeVito art.
And it's right. Like it's the right kind of art for this thing.
Yes. And I think the team is interesting, even though I started to lose track of who they are, in which countries they represent within the United Kingdom. But it's not super important. I think Bulldog is funny because he's short and squat. And they play with the conventions of England, and it's funny. And this heist at the Tower of London was cool, and the Beefeater was awesome. I just thought this was like a good old superhero comic.
Yes, yeah, it was. A good old British superhero.
It's on the Gosh scale. It's not like off the charts, but it's like on the scale. It registers on the scale.
It has enough of it, and it's just fresh enough. And same thing. Like I was really impressed with Paul Grist forever ago. Ron was like, you got to read his Union. Is it Union Jack?
Kane and
Kane.
Jack something.
Jack something. Yeah. And neither of us, you or I, got into it.
Jack Staff.
I
don't remember.
Jack
it was definitely
Staff.
Kane.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Anyway, beautiful books, but I just didn't quite get what was going on. And this clicks. This works. It's really fun. And it was unexpected. So
I like that as a team that basically is thrown together because their Superman character died. Their Wonder Woman character died. The leader of the team, and so now this is like all the misfits trying to honor her legacy and also protect the Union, and it's been good. So it's a miniseries. I'm sure probably next issue is the last one, but I've enjoyed it. Quick break now. Let's talk about Macroverse. I'd like to thank them. They're our sponsor. They're the next generation comics and webtoon app that is a universe of adventure. When you download the app for iOS or Android, not only do you get some of the best curated comics around, but you also get to read them using Macroverse's unique tap story format. Thanks to the unique tap story, all the comics in Macroverse are custom crafted for your phone, adding the element of time and a page turn between each tap. This means creators can craft the reading experience to create an immersive experience of humor, jump scares, and ultimately avoid spoiling the story by scanning ahead, the page ahead.
So you're saying that thing with the Velociraptor head would have worked really well on this? Actually, it would have.
Yeah, you would have tapped it and the head would have appeared next to Wally. So
and then you would have thought, like that.
That's the way comics would be if they were invented today. If you love comics, the webtoons, you'll love it. Macroverse has comics for everyone. Comics for kids like Rock, Mary, Rock. For YA audiences like Lich and Remind. Horror with Dead Town and Dame Yaga. And action like Billy Smoke and Auntie. Here's some of our picks from the app that you'll want to check. Remind is the Eisner Award-nominated Miyazaki-esque tale of a young woman looking for her lost cat. But when he washes up on shore of her sleepy coastal town with a head full of stitches and the startling ability to speak and no memory of how he got that way, her quiet life is forever changed. Dead Town. This series follows Chan, a classic hard-boiled anti-hero, as he plies his trade in a world overrun by zombies. Visually inspired by the rich black and white style of Touch of Evil and the Maltese Falcon, Dead Town combines film noir and the zombie horror genre in an edgy reimagining of the detective thriller. An upcoming release of Season 2 of Paul Scheer's action comedy Aliens vs. Parker. This is a unique creator's cut of the Boom series, rewritten and reimagined specifically for Macroverse. And it's actually already out. Came out earlier this month. And if you want to get on board with the next generation of comics, go download Macroverse today, available on iOS and Android. You can use our special link to get the app, ifn.by/macroverse, or go to ifanboy.com and click on the link of the post in the show notes. With this app, you get multiple series with free episodes, and then it's $4.99 a month for unlimited access to all the great comics on Macroverse. Check it out at macroverse.com or download the app by going to ifn.by/macroverse. Thanks to Macroverse for the support of the show, and go enjoy the next generation of comics with Macroverse.
I think that it is satisfying to say Billy Smoke.
Billy Smoke is a great title.
Billy Smoke. It's a good name. It's a good title. Yeah, I think we just got people to read that series just by saying Billy Smoke. Somebody out there, maybe not a lot, a couple of people are going to be out there walking around at some point. They're just going to think Billy Smoke because it sticks in your head. Billy Smoke. Strange Adventures number 9. I'm not going to tell you I'm getting worried.
Yeah.
But I'm waiting for a shoe to drop, and I feel like I've been waiting for a shoe to drop for some time.
We got 3 episodes left. 3 minutes. 3 episodes. 3 issues left. Whew.
Like, are you with me? What do you think?
It's been one of those weeks. I'm collapsing mentally. Yes, no, I agree with you. I finished this issue and I was like, I don't know.
I think we were getting somewhere for a little bit, and I think that I do understand. Like, for a while, I did not really know what the conflict was. I was like, everyone's mad at him for some reason, and now really the question seems to be more or less, did this guy commit war crimes while he was doing this thing over there? Was he justified in doing so? And either way, should he be part of our superhero society? That seems to be the thrust of it. And so like who are you to tell me what the right thing is? You know, and Alana is very much on the hardliner side. You know, Batman is very much on the we have to do the right thing side, which makes sense because he doesn't kill people. Also
Superman as well.
Yeah. Well, Superman is a moralist Boy Scout asshole. No. In the real world, people would just not like him. Sure. We like him, but in the real world, be like, oh, that fucking guy.
Because he makes you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I think it's tough. I think the thing that I don't know if that it's working is at some point the Picts invaded Earth. And I don't know that part of the story is working because it's sort of happening in the background.
Where it seems like it should be a really big deal.
Popping into the foreground. I'm like, oh, right, yeah, they're fighting a giant war on Earth with the Picts. But it doesn't really fit into the media narrative, device he's got going on here. Like, why are there still silly talk shows going on if there's this giant war happening on Earth?
I think that would totally happen.
Phoenix was destroyed.
Yeah.
It just seems like the device of the war on Earth to parallel the war that he fought with the Picts on Rand doesn't really work.
It's also difficult to... I don't have a concept of who the Picts are or what their deal is. And I think that we were getting towards it for a little while, but I don't think it was resolved. I think the bits where, Mr. Terrific was a big part of this and he went there, he went to Rand and he learned a bunch of stuff. And I was like, oh, all right, here we go. We're getting somewhere. And then I feel like we just left that behind. He delivered his report and he had a conversation with Alana. And then, for the last 2 or 3 issues, I'm not sure what we're doing.
Right. I think this book was way more effective. And look, there's 3 more issues. There's a lot that could happen.
Yes.
But I think this book was way more effective when it was a smaller story about Adam, his secret, Alana, her secret, and then Mr. Terrific trying to figure out those secrets. Mm-hmm. And, flashing back to his war. I think adding the second layer of war on top of it I don't think it's added anything to the story, but it's only made it more complicated.
I mean, I think that it gives context to everybody else giving a shit. Meaning, I don't know that they would care what happened on Ran or in another universe necessarily in the same way if it hadn't come to them. But I also think that, it was a long time ago, and I think it's definitely probably read better if you read it all at once, like a novel. But there was the guy in the bookstore, there was a thing that happened on Earth, and maybe that's what tipped the whole thing off. That's why they started looking into it. I'm not sure.
I'm certainly not writing this book off. I think there's a lot that can happen in the next 3 issues. And I think I would like to read it all over, but you don't want to rank things. But right now, this might be the least effective of the Tom King prestige books so far.
It could also be the most beautiful, though.
Oh, sure.
It
goes without saying that Mitch Gera's induction art is terrific, and I love when they share a page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice. It's cool because they've been friends forever, and now they get to work on this high, prestige project together, and it's a really great collaboration. There's no you know, like, well, you do this part on the page, and like it's like they're having fun with it, and I love that.
And I'm not necessarily convinced that if you go back and listen to our Mr. Miracle discussion that we weren't feeling this way around issue 8 and 9 of Mr. Miracle. I'm not.
That feels right.
So it could possibly be that this all turns around. We've got another act to go. So
it's inherently unfair to judge something that you know is going to swerve at some point very soon.
Right.
So we're I mean, we could very well like be discussing the red herring, which is supposed to make you feel like this, and I'm we're willing to give him that. We're not going to not finish it.
Sure. Oh, for sure not. Yeah, definitely.
In my search for fairness, in my search for inclusion in the pick of the week, I said, well, there's a number one here from Marvel. It's Silk #1. I'm vaguely aware there was a Spider-Man-esque character named Silk, and I will read this book. It is written by Maureen Gu, who I have never heard of. It was drawn by Takashi Miyazawa, who I have heard of, with colors by Ian Herring and letters by Ariana Mar. And, she is a Korean-American Spider-Man character type thing. She was bit by the same spider that Peter Parker was, apparently. She doesn't have web shooters. She shoots webby stuff out of her fingers. But she's also a wannabe journalist, and she has gone to work for one J. Jonah Jameson at his new podcast website thing, whatever it is, Threats and Menaces.
Right.
And she doesn't quite fit in because I don't know, her parents are gone or dead. I forget from the beginning. She lives with her brother, and she's doing the Peter Parker thing. Journalist by day, new cub reporter kind of thing, and then trying to be a superhero at night. And it was fun. I thought it was really good looking. Miyazawa did the Runaways, I think, at some point.
Yes. Yeah. Great artist.
Yeah, it was kind of. I mean, it felt a little like, like a bit of a rehash of a Spider-Man story, but sort of updated with characters that made it different enough. It's a fun formula, and I thought the characters were pretty interesting. I always find the new interpretations of what J. Jonah Jameson is. He's one of those characters who's very elastic, I think. Where he can be a lot of different things. Like you can either say, oh man, he's a total goofball. And then sometimes it's like, well, he was playing at a goofball. And then there's some like, he's a goofball, but underneath that is gravitas. There's all sorts of different ways to do it. And I think it's that last one in this. And it's basically like, because of something she did, she published a story on accident that she hadn't meant to yet. Then J. Jonah was attacked. And so she saved him. And then he was like, I want to hire you as my bodyguard. And she's like, well, I work for you during the day. She doesn't say that because he doesn't know who she is. So now she's working for J. Jonah in 2 jobs as 2 different people.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's there's gangs in Queens. There's something like that. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It wasn't the greatest thing on earth, but yeah, I think I'll read the next one. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
There were no symbiotes.
That's important. I'm gonna download it right now while you talk.
Over to Image, we have Shadecraft #1. Now this is from Joe Henderson and Lee Garbett, and they did the book whose title I can't remember, but it was about the girl who could fly. And there was
Flight.
No, it's at the end of this. In the end, but either way, I really liked that book. It went on for quite a while, and this was their follow-up to it. And in the end, he kind of talks about Skyward. He talks about how they were really slow to get this started because people really liked Skyward, and they were like, I don't want to show them the next thing because what if they don't like it? And which I just thought was a nice thing.
Well, Joe Anderson's a TV writer, right?
Yeah. That's the other thing. You get YA writers and then like cable drama showrunners. Those are the people.
Well, it makes sense. Someone who's not sort of familiar with the world would be, reticent about doing a second thing.
Yeah. Whereas if people who came up in comics are like, here's a series, here's another series.
Yeah. The world of comics, not the world in general.
Right.
Not diminishes professional accomplishments.
The story is about a young girl who is afraid of things. Her brother is in a coma and her parents are in kind of a rough place, and she's got to sort of go on about her life like things are normal. But then a shadow starts to attack her, and then her shadow fights that one back, and she's trying to talk to people. She's like, people, my shadow, like, and they're like, nah, they're going to think you're crazy. Don't talk about that. I don't fully understand it. I think it is Lee Garbett beautiful. I think he's a really underrated talent.
Yes.
Really,
solid artist.
Really solid artist. I think it's a really good looking book. I'm not sure what it is yet. The tone doesn't seem to match itself, meaning that it's a little lighthearted for a girl who's freaked out that her shadows are fighting other shadows, and like, but I don't know what it is yet. It's called Shadecraft, so I assume there's going to be some sort of magic thing. I actually really liked the thing about Skyward was that it was a scientific, like somebody screwed up something and it turned gravity off, and then everything that followed that. This seems to be a little more supernatural, but benefit of the doubt because I like that other series.
Was very sci-fi, even though it involved like giant bugs and things. It was very sort of based in science and reality.
Yeah. And so, but I don't know what this is yet. It's, again, I'm not going to say it's a cold open because it is more than that. He explained it, but I don't think that we know yet. But it wasn't bad. I liked it. I didn't love it. I will read the next one for sure because I really liked the stuff that they did before. I read all of Skyward, so
the art in Silk is terrific.
Yeah, it really is.
Takashi Miyazawa is great. Those books we wanted to talk about, you can always vote for the Patron Pick over at patreon.com/iFanboy. Any patron can vote to add a book to the rundown. And this week, patrons picked Beta Ray Bill #1.
Yay! Which should save us some time.
We covered that. So it's been a while since we had the Patron Pick match, the pick of the week. But there you go. Patreon.com/iFanboy. So you can vote to add a book to the rundown. And we did it independently of them, but we were all in agreement. So that was nice.
We have to rate it. I mean, I think we both know we're going to read the next one, so that's clear.
Sticking with it, I'm giving Beta Ray Bill 4.7 out of 5.
I'm going to give it 5. I thought about saying what you said, and I just thought, you know what? I'm giving it this. It was so good that I didn't understand it was that good until after. I was like, I think I really liked that, and then the more I thought about it, I was like, I have no fault with this book, none.
I also, and Daniel Warren Johnson is an incredible artist.
Yeah,
we need more art like his in comics.
Yeah.
Big overwrought, epic feeling art to it.
I just realized, and I don't know that it immediately obvious, but I think there's a lot of Scotty Young in that work. Like if you think back, not the baby stuff that Scotty does, the covers that pay the bills maybe, but, when you think back to what, Wizard of Oz looked like and stuff like that, it's, the character designs aren't necessarily similar, but the sort of energy of it and the looseness.
There's also a lot of Simonson's, epic.
Yeah,
epic
it's a really Sorry, see, extra.
What would happen if Philip Kennedy Johnson wrote a book and Daniel Warren Johnson drew it?
But what if Wade Von Crawbadger and LeBeau, whatever his last name was, came in and worked on it?
LeBeau Johnson? LeBeau Underwood. Like a typewriter.
LeBeau Johnson was a character in the 4th arc of Preacher.
LeBeau Underwood only inks via typewriter, and you can't believe it when you see it. It's just it shouldn't work, but it does.
You're just burning patron powers here, buddy.
Sorry. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Give the $5 higher level, get your own superpower live on the show, like these fine folks.
Lars Pedersen. It's a good name. It's nice. Yep. He keeps everyone on time. There's something that happens. It's like a reality warping field that anybody who's involved with a project or anything that he's doing, they get there on time. They don't hit traffic. They don't oversleep. Everybody gets there on time. What
about for deliverables? Are they delivered on time?
Yeah,
all the work stuff.
Yeah. His team. And I don't know. I don't understand how far out this goes. So like if he works at a large company, if everybody
Lars Pedersen would be extremely valuable to any corporation and should be making a lot of money as a consultant.
Yes, totally. I mean, what you don't want though is you don't want him coming in there. He doesn't want to be like in a situation where like just come and stand here. Like he has to be involved with the thing.
He doesn't just stand in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
He is actually, yes, I get you.
Yeah, it's his team. They have to be doing something. They have to be involved in a process, in a project, in an undertaking. But this also occurs like you want to be on a flight with this guy. Hey, we're going to Cancun this weekend. We're going with Lars. Great. That plane's taken off.
He wants to be involved in any flight out of San Francisco.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've been So delayed out of San Francisco.
I gotta say, I live in the Northeast, so I mean, Crimea River.
I had worse delays out of San Francisco than I ever had out of the Northeast.
Yeah. We
had that 10-hour delay out of San Francisco.
I mean, to be fair, I regularly travel between New Hampshire and San Francisco. And I had to, for a while, I was doing a 2-part flight, and I was like, well, this isn't going to work anymore. We have to go direct and direct only.
Kevin Krull, great name.
Yeah.
Kevin Krull.
I'm seeing that throwing star thing, whatever that is.
Kevin Krull absorbs smoke into his body. So like really valuable, like a cookout, you know? If you're like, oh, the girl's too close to the house, smoke's getting inside.
Or if you're really pan frying the hell out of something inside.
Yeah, in the kitchen. Yeah, for sure.
Does he have like a removable filter, or
it just absorbs into his body?
And I want to know, are there health effects from that?
No, he's fine.
Okay.
He just absorbs it. Smoke comes to him and absorbs into him, and it's gone.
You want to go camping with that guy. I know that much.
A lot of uses.
Mason Kerr emits bursts of steam from anywhere on his skin where that needs to happen. So,
like a teapot?
I mean, that could be one way. So,
does he make noise?
I mean, as much as it,
a whistle?
Yeah, like it's well, that's the teapot with a very specific shape to do that. But if you think about
there's a steam whistle like on a train.
Yeah. Well, again, that's shaped to be a whistle. But if you think about like a spacecraft,
yeah,
or maybe like a cleaning tool, like a high-powered burst of steam from the finger to sort of get that gunk off of the stovetop, or I mean, perhaps his feet emit bursts of steam where he could levitate. There's endless ways that he can emit steam, bursts of steam.
Cool. Does he need the input of water?
I was thinking about that, and I haven't decided.
Does he need to drink a cup of water before he can burst the steam out?
Yeah, I think there has to be a limit, because otherwise, that would be the thing. Like, he'd dehydrate himself same way that like a speedster's metabolism is so great. Right. That they have to eat a bunch of calories, which they either use or don't use in a story, depending on what they need. So I think that's how I would do it with Mason's story. But bursts of steam.
Charlie Oliver can control the temperature of any body of water he enters. So, like, if he got in a bath and it's like, oh, the water's gotten cold, he heats it. He can heat it right back up.
I want to point out that a man who knows taking a bath is going to say it that way instead of the other way. A person who is not down with baths would say, oh, if it's too hot. But a person who has experienced baths would say, no, that gets cold, because that's the real problem.
Exactly.
Yep.
I mean, it's also the other way around too. If it's too hot, he can lower the temperatures a bit till it's the perfect temperature. But any body of water, he can control. And listen, I'm giving him terrible and scary powers. He could enter the ocean, and he can control the temperature of the ocean he's in.
Wow! Like,
yeah,
and to a limitless, because that could cause some real problems.
Right.
Okay.
It's an awful and scary power if
great power
used. But more likely, he's going to be more comfortable in like a lake scenario. Less environmental damage.
Yeah, but I mean, you could fuck up some fish.
Right. So Charlie's got an awful scary power on his hands. So he's got to use it wisely.
So okay, let's say that he's on vacation with Kevin, and Kevin has sucked all the smoke out of the air, which is basically an absolute good. Yes. And then they're like, hey, let's go swimming. He's Charlie, this is a little cold, and he's like, sorry, no can do. I don't want to fuck up the eel population.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
The funny thing about this is we had a lot fewer books this week, and I thought we'd definitely have a lot of extra time this week, and we're not going to have all that extra time.
No.
Because we can't shut our fucking mouths.
I mean, that is the point. It's hard to come down on us for doing the thing that is the thing we're supposed to be doing.
Patreon.com/iFanboy. Thanks for being patrons. Lars, Kevin, Mason, Charlie, take your powers and in the spirit in which they were given and use them wisely.
Yes. So the patrons, we talked about that, and I'll keep this one quicker. The patrons are very important and beloved, and selfless and generous and good people. Just they're good people. They have helped unlock shows like the Patron Pick, the Talk Explodes, the Book Explodes, the Media Explodes. Are we caught up? Are we fully caught up? We have to do a Media Explode for March, right? Or for April, right? That's
we did everything that was owed in March, and then we had the schedule wrong in our heads. We actually did the April Book Explode on April 1st. So we're actually ahead of the game.
Nice. So
we have an April Media Explode, yes. But we did the April Book Explode.
There'll be a Media Explode. There will be a patron hangout this month. And the YouTube content is going up fast and furious on a very regular basis each week. Our next goal would be a new show, a new weekly podcast. I didn't mean weekly. I didn't say that. I did not strike that from the record. Fucking Christ. Our leading choice now would be a G.I. Joe cartoon, one episode at a time. That comes from the fact that early in the pandemic, we didn't have new comics. So we're like, let's watch G.I. Joe episodes and talk about them each episode we do here. And that was very fun. If there's another goal, maybe there'll be a new kind of barbecue email video show like we used to have on a quarterly basis. That's a possibility. It's a long shot. It's a big stretch. It's a stretch goal. It's a big stretch goal. The patrons also get the Patron Facebook group and Discord servers where they can have a fun community and talk about things. And every once in a while remind me that it exists. And I go on and I'm like, all right, I really like this. You can go to iFanboy or threadless.com. You'll find 8 designs to put on t-shirts, sweatshirts, tank tops. I don't know if they have boy shorts. I don't know. There's things. You can put them on things. You can put them on probably phone cases. All sorts of things. We will probably add something at some point. I think we need to.
Yes.
You can go to ifanboy.com/support if you don't want to deal with any of that. There's a direct PayPal link if you wanted to do a donations there. That has happened recently. It does happen sometimes. There's ifanboy.com/Amazon where you'll find a link to buy all the books on Booksplode. You will find a link to buy the pick of the week and also the music that we use in every given show. There will be a link for that, and there's a general link over to Amazon.com for your purchasing needs. And let's do... Christ, I thought we would have more time. Let's do the first one. Let's see where we go.
Matthew writes in and says... You always express a good long-range view of the comic cycle, that the publishers and their major characters have strong and weak periods, neither of which last forever. We're pretty clearly in a weaker moment for all 3 of the largest publishers. What do you think typically leads to these lulls, and what kind of changes or events have historically pulled the cycle back into a strong phase? If it matters, I've been thinking about this for a couple of months as my stack has shrunk, and I can't always tell when it's a 5th week or just a weak. W-E-A-K. Week. Matthew's in a ennui stage of comic reading,
which is a thing.
Yeah.
Do you
listen to this show for a long time? You'll hear all of us, and I say all of us because there's been 4 regular hosts of the show plus all the guest hosts have gone through ennui stages.
Yeah. Do you think that is a effect of a general trend that is happening in comics, or it is related somewhat more to the person, who like the subjective effect of that on them?
Well, it's all a big old stew.
Mm-hmm.
So you got all kinds of ingredients, and it all depends. The ingredients all change the stew. So like for some people, this might be the greatest time of comics ever for their own personal reasons. You can only sort of talk about it in your own way. And the thing is, when usually on this show, and it was more so when we had a third host, was that if we all, with various different tastes and interests, thought the comics were in a lull, then there's a good chance that was the case. If we all thought comics were going gangbusters, then there's a good chance that was also the case. But at the end of the day, it's all personal. And someone's listening to this going, I love everything right now. These guys hate comics. And that's totally valid to think that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're not in as much of a lull as we were maybe a year ago. But we're still not like, in a super great place.
I think that there's an objective time that this happens, and it seems to be like when the companies don't know what to do for themselves. They don't know there's times where they're like, we have to change something, we have to try something else, but they don't know what that is. And so you get this thing where like, what about the future state? And then that they did half of it and then yanked it. So we saw sort of what they were thinking. And then there's, the reboot that they decided to do instead of that. There's, the time period where Marvel more so, but DC, they were really focusing on inclusion and bringing in, a lot of different types of characters and maybe replacing some of their legacy characters. And that works and doesn't work to a certain extent. And you take the good things out of that and you abandon the things that didn't work out of it. But those sort of middle times where they don't have a direction, and I think sometimes that's an editorial direction, that it's a decision, and sometimes it's just a zeitgeist of there's a bunch of folks there doing great work. I think at Marvel, in the early 2000s, I think Bendis being around there with Joe Quesada as EIC, like it kickstarted a thing, and people lined up and followed, and they got there, and I think then DC followed up in that. I think there's just times where everything sort of starts to line up and all the comics feed off of each other and get really good. But the other times when they don't know what it is. They're trying to decide. They're, like maybe one generation is sort of like slowing down, of the creators. And so the next people have to come along, and then you end up, with a bunch of, they're just feeling their way around, and then momentum starts up. And
I think we're focusing mostly on Marvel and DC because
although I think
Image, it's like depends on who's making the books.
Well, right, because the same person has been greenlighting the books now for well over a decade. But I do think that, again, that works in the same way. At that one part of Image where all of the Marvel and DC creators, the mainstream people, went over and they were doing new series, and I think they were all feeding into each other, and they were egging each other on, and we got so much great stuff. Through
competition.
That time. Yeah.
So I think. A lot of it comes down to really kind of boring business decisions, which people don't really care about. So like lulls tend to happen when there's no strong creative direction from the top. And also from when there was a point, I'm trying to think of when it was, about 11 years ago, when almost all the top talent went to Marvel. So you had a really tough DC lull for a while because they just didn't have any of the top people, the most talented people making comics at the time were all doing Marvel books. So Marvel was going well, but DC wasn't. That's a business decision. All they went for the Marvel exclusive contracts. And if you go all the way back to 2000 and the late 90s, you had the bankruptcy at Marvel, and that's a business problem. But then when Quesada comes on, and Palmiotti as the heads of Marvel Knights and then the heads of the company itself, they set a strong creative vision for the company, and then they let their creators run with it, and that led to great comics. And then I think the same things happened at DC in the early 2000s, mid 2000s.
Jeff Johns.
You had Jeff Johns, and you had Greg Rucka, and you had people who were given a direction for the universe and the characters, and were able to run with it. I think when you get a wishy-washy direction from the top, and I'm not saying that Future State is, but it could be. We don't know. We'll see what happens. It doesn't usually lead to good books. You need a strong creative vision. That's the whole point of the editor-in-chief.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think Jim Shooter was, I don't think everybody loved what he did or whatever, but I think that you can say that he did lend an energy to it, as did Stan Lee. I mean, Stan and Jack, at a certain point, they, spearheaded that, and people were just trying to keep up with them, and that created a really good time period. And, that's the cycle. I think you sort of throw darts around in the dark, and then at one point somebody hits, and people start moving in a direction, and they're energized and excited. You see that. And
also things just happen, you get sort of in a rut. The industry can get in a rut too. You've had the same people. When you have the same people writing the same characters for years, sometimes it's great, and they can weave a great, epic story over the course of a decade, but sometimes it just gets to be like rote and repetitive. And you can get that way. Remember after that period of Marvel we talked about, you had Jason Aaron, you had Bendis, you had Brubaker, you had Remender, you had all the great talent.
The architects.
But then they all sort of stayed on their books a little too long.
Yeah.
So they got to the point then we had a lull with Marvel because everything kind of felt repetitive and kind of boring. And maybe you run out of ideas for Daredevil, but you're still writing Daredevil. So then, and I'm not calling him, but I'm just picking a random character out. And so that can lead to a lull until someone new comes along and shakes things up and brings in new ideas and fresh ideas. And it's all, it's just all cyclical. There's business influences, there's creative influences, there's a new generation of creators comes along in the early 2000s and injects new life into things. We haven't really had like that kind of. We've had a couple of people come in, like Donny Cates and like the Johnson and Johnson guys, but
I mean, I think
we haven't had like a line-wide injection of new talent like we had 20 years ago.
Yeah, I would say that 10 years ago, the idea of breaking into comics as a writer started to get really hard, mainstream comics, because the people were just in place. And I think that some of those people decided to move along, and do other things. Rick Remender's a really good example of that, and I think some new people have come in, and it's funny because I used to know where they came from, and now I don't know who they are or where they're coming from. And you've got to sort of pick and choose and find your way. But there's been some really great new talent. And I'm talking about writers largely in that sense. There's kind of always really cool artists to be found around, but those two things sort of work off each other too. Like a great artist and great writer together will create something extra special. And that
it just all goes on when you have this weekly grind, and we say grind in a loving way. We have this weekly grind of books that come out. You're going to eventually hit a lull, and then something will spark it up, and it'll get better. And
I think that happens with creators and readers, which is why you see that.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. I think overall it's kind of a lull in that there are definitely a lot of great books, but there's also a lot of books where it's just like, that was fine. Yeah. And I think I just don't know the overall the direction. I don't know that DC knows what it wants to be right now, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it has an AT&T boss, and who knows what that means. And Marvel is so beholden to the movies. And I don't mean that in a business sense. I mean sort of creatively. I think that's been hamstringing Marvel books for a long time.
I think that
for
the main
that's just me.
I think the main thing right now is that there are really good books, but they're B tier books, and the A level books, which are supposed to be great, aren't. They're not bad, that they're not like knock your socks off. And I think that also has something to do. We've been reading comics a long time. And if you read superhero comics a long time, just like if you write superhero comics a long time, at a certain point, you start to feel like you've said or seen everything. And that can be really hard. Mark Waid is an amazing comic book writer, but there's real possibilities. Maybe like, I don't have a heck of a lot left to say about a lot of these superheroes. And then he comes back and he does something for a little while and then he backs up. You know what I mean? Like, that's anybody. You're a rock band. You're like, well, all right, we've got 4 chords in the truth. What now?
Right. And again, it's all personal. So you could be listening to the show going, I don't know what these guys are talking about. Comics are terrific. And that's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say we're definitely, I mean, if you listen to the show, there's definitely been worse periods of comics than right now.
Yeah.
And we're certainly not, there's been periods of the time where I just haven't really liked anything I've been reading. And that's certainly definitely not the case right now.
Yep.
So, but at the same time, it's not like 10 years ago. It was not like when we first started the show. We were still in that period of time with, the mid 2000s DC was going like gangbusters, and there was a lot of great stuff happening at Marvel, and that was probably that's not happening right now, but maybe it will. Who knows? Contact@ifanboy.com. That's so you can write in like Matthew and everyone else who wrote in this week. Thanks for writing in. We appreciate it. Hopefully one day we'll get to do more than one email on the show.
There was a Talksload we did in the last month. It was Joshua Williamson and Ibrahim Mustafa. Make sure that you check out Count from Ibrahim. I'm going to go through this. There was Booksplode. We did Avengers West Coast Vision Quest and real deep into the Gosh.
I would like to, first of all, this show came out just behind this one, so it's relatively new, but also I'd like to point out that so far the reaction to that show has been exactly what I was hoping for, which is everyone sort of reveling in how awesome that book was and how awesome that era of comics was.
Yeah.
So that's been great to see.
And like I think we said on that show, like I would love to see people who were maybe younger than us or never read.
Someone did post about that. They were about 10 years younger than us, and they came to it in their 20s, and they enjoyed it as much as we did as a kid.
That's great. Yeah. There will be a media explode coming out this month. I have no idea what that will be. Probably something to do with the Oscars, which means that I'll bring a book along while they talk.
Who knows what it'll be.
Head over to ifanboy.com. You can find all of our shows. You can find our vast history of comic book writing and podcasts from all the talented writers. There's getting on to about 100 creator interviews in there. We're getting pretty close to that. And that's a little history of comics lesson going on there as well. You can find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out over at iFanboy or Facebook.com/iFanboy. iFanboy on Twitter, or iFanboy Comics on Instagram. You can follow us individually on Instagram at CSKilpatrick and JA Flanagan, should you wish to do that. You can subscribe to our YouTube page over at youtube.com. You guessed it, /iFanboy. You can like and subscribe. Or just subscribe, or just like. It doesn't. It's not. Listen, it's not an either or thing.
As long as you smash some button.
Smash the button.
Whichever button it is you smash, that's what it is.
I'm pointing in a direction. Which direction has no buttons? I'm guessing upper right. If I point there, there's nothing. That's just if you have a bookmark up there, you might go somewhere else, which I don't want you to do. I don't care. This past week we had Death and Comics, episode 103, where we talked about deaths in comics, famous comic book deaths. Most of those characters are probably alive by now.
Oh, yes.
Because it used to be the rule, Bucky and Jason Todd, they don't get resurrected, and that one's out the window.
It's Bucky and Barry Allen.
Oh, really? I think that was an earlier version of the rule I may not have been aware of. And there's a Pick of the Week mini, because we would do a mini on the Pick of the Week. That sounds really tiring now. She had to write a review, do a podcast, and do a mini about the show. Good God. About the book. That was Amazing Spider-Man number 560, which was a really good period on Amazing Spider-Man, if I remember correctly.
Marcos Martin on the art for that one. And then the third show this week was a spotlight on the Secret Invasion event. It had wrapped up, and so we looked back on it, and people got mad at us in the comments originally. Hey, if you like the show, write us a review or leave a star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you listen to your podcast, wherever podcasts are sold, wherever you get them. If someone's selling you the podcast, you should let us know, because that's not
the podcast bodega.
Right. Like, we don't get a cut of that. They shouldn't be selling you the show. It's not cool. Better than that, tell your friends, your mom, your kid, your letter carrier, your vaccine nurse, anyone who's you're encountering.
Let them do their job. Let the vaccine nurse, or it's a firefighter in my instance, just maybe afterwards, if they need a break, like, I've had a long day, and you're like, do you like comic books? And if they say yes, then go for it. But don't be intrusive to those people.
Oh, no, I'm not saying to be a jerk about it. I just had to make some small talk. So I was like, I could have told her about the podcast.
Right.
I didn't.
Right.
So then in that sense, I blew it.
Yeah, you kind of did. Well, you got another chance. Unless you have the Johnson & Johnson one.
No, I'll have another chance. So help us spread the love to whoever it is you encounter. I just assume that's all you're encountering these days. So
yeah, that makes sense. So what I'm hearing there is that both you and I have been properly jabbed.
I got jabbed once. Yeah,
I got jabbed
I'm
once.
going to get jabbed again. Yeah.
Yep, in a month. So you should be doing that. You should go as soon as possible. You should do your part. I believe it was referred to as patriotic, and I absolutely believe that. And my experience made me feel quite patriotic, if I might be honest.
Patriotic as a human.
Yes, that's a good point. I think you know what? Sometimes I forget that I'm talking to not all Americans on here, because in my life, mostly just talk to Americans. But
I mean, it's 75% Americans. But
what is the
one out of four.
What is the non-national version of patriotism?
Humanism.
Good. Is it humanism? Pan-humanism?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's a good citizen of the earth, is what it is.
Yes.
There you go. I'll go with that.
All right.
It's patriotic to whatever your country is, though. That can be that, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. Okay. Until next week, I'm Connor.
I'm Josh. Thank you.